And the United States military has now reimposed its naval blockade of ships traveling to and from Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz. The blockade had been lifted last month after the memorandum of understanding was signed, but it's now back on as fighting is again flaring up. Iran's Revolutionary Guard threatened yesterday to halt all energy exports from the Middle East over the reinstated blockade. President Trump had initially said he would also impose a 20% toll on ships passing through the strait in exchange for providing security, but he then walked that back just a day later, claiming yesterday that fees will instead be replaced by investments from Gulf allies. Both sides, meanwhile, continue to trade attacks, with the U.S. launching what it called a 7-hour wave of strikes overnight on Iranian military targets, and Tehran retaliating by firing at U.S. bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan. Iran says more than 30 civilians have been killed in recent U.S. attacks. It all begs the question about what comes next. President Trump told Fox News yesterday he's no longer interested in negotiating with Iran, while also renewing his threats to target civilian infrastructure there.
You've called the new leadership in Iran a changed regime. Do you still believe that?
Well, I knew the first group for a little while, and they were evil, and they're no longer with us. I knew the second group also a little bit better, and they were evil, and they're no longer with us. And the third group, they have some bad ones in there, some very bad ones in there.
Just some?
And I think they're the ones that are stopping a deal.
So are you negotiating with the wrong people?
Well, now I don't want to negotiate now. I said, let's not negotiate. 3 days ago, we had a deal. I'll save the energy targets for last, but ultimately we'll hit energy targets, yeah. But we're going to hit them very hard tonight. We're going to hit them very hard tomorrow night. We're going to hit them very hard the night after. And then next week it gets really bad for them, because next week comes the power plants. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
Here with me on set, retired CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos. He's an MS Now national security and intelligence analyst. In a lot of ways, it does feel like we're back at square one here. Trump is talking about all of the negotiators that are no longer with us, but this conflict very much still is. What do you make of the ways that the president is now clearly off the memorandum of understanding? The ceasefire that was really a ceasefire in name only is not even being pretended anymore. And we are in this posture of wait and see. What are we waiting to see?
So, Ellie, we're certainly back to square one in the sense of, this is we're obviously kinetic military activity against the Iranians. The difference, though, this time, I think is twofold. One is it's over the Strait of Hormuz, which was not one of our original war aims. Remember, we're talking about the Iranian nuclear program, ballistic missiles, proxies, and perhaps regime change. That's all out the window. Now it's all about the Strait of Hormuz. But the point that I think it has to be made is, and I'm not sure if it was in that clip or one afterwards or with a different interview, is that someone asked about, well, this has been several months of fighting with Iran. He said, don't worry, Vietnam took 19 years.
Yes.
I'm not sure that's the soundbite that the Republicans really want to have go forward, but I think it reflects the notion that there's no really end in sight here. And we're back essentially now to a game of patience. This is a tit for tat climbing the escalatory ladder. With the U.S. economy on the one hand versus, Iranian resilience over attacks against their targets. And I don't know where this actually ends. Well,
especially when the president, and you're right, he did liken it from a timeline perspective to Vietnam. Again, I don't think that's the comparison for so many reasons that Republicans or any American wants to see the president making here. But it does sort of leave open the question of, are we expecting a further escalation, especially when at the very beginning of this war, the administration was trying to call it anything but that, but the concern on Capitol Hill was ground troops.
And so when you talk about climbing the escalatory ladder, so right now we're hitting targets that essentially Iranian military targets that they were using to harass ships in the Strait of Hormuz. But what comes next? President Trump just telegraphed it there: infrastructure, energy targets. And that, again, goes down the line of, OK, the Iranians then will retaliate on their own against the Gulf and all the infrastructure targets there. So we really are kind of upping the ante. With the kind of the last piece on this is, what about Karg Island? That's that processing island in off the coast of Iran, in which there's always been talk about potentially inserting U.S. ground forces. Again, from the military perspective, you can see why we would try to do that. Politically, that I think would be disastrous. And so, we are climbing up the escalatory ladder. In the past, there's been kind of both sides wanted to stop. I'm not sure that's the case now. And of course, we also have to worry about what if there's a mass casualty attack? What if one of these ballistic missiles or drones hits a U.S. Navy ship, and then it's really game on?
It puts our intelligence community, I think, into focus, which is notable because we now have today the confirmation hearing for Jay Clayton, who's President Trump's pick to be the next director of national intelligence. That's going to take place before the Senate Intel Committee in just a few hours. Clayton's hearing, you'll remember, was initially scheduled for last month, but Trump abruptly delayed his nomination in an effort to get the Senate to first pass his controversial Save America Act that would require photo ID and proof of registration to vote. It would also block vote by mail and present a lot of problems at the ballot box. Both Democrats and Republicans appeared eager to confirm Clayton at the time, having expressed concerns with acting DNI Bill Pulte, who has no prior intelligence, national security, or defense experience. There are just so many questions, I think, that Clayton is going to have to answer, including but not limited to, when you think about the fact that timing is everything and they wanted to do this a month ago, in the intervening weeks, there have been subpoenas sent to New York Times reporters over their reporting on security concerns of the Qatari-gifted Air Force One. That's coming out of Clayton's SDNY. Right. He's going to have to answer those questions now, too.
Ellie, I think that's going to be the first thing he answers because there's a lot of concern over this, and rightfully so. How he kind of manages that will be interesting. But I think the real question will be on the politicization of the intelligence community. And in fact, there was a climate survey. I think Shane Harris of The Atlantic put out an article maybe a couple days ago that noted that CIA employees were very worried about politicization, particularly when it comes to Tulsi Gabbard. So he's going to be asked about this. And it just comes down to the end. It's anybody but Pulte, the acting DNI right now. So I think Clayton will get confirmed. There will be some serious questions. He also does have Democratic support. Jim Himes, while he's the chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, not the Senate, who does the confirmation hearings. But Himes supports Clayton, so I think he'll make it through. But this is a great opportunity for the American people to see questioning on a key intelligence role. And don't forget, Thursday night, the president has an address where this whole issue of politicized intelligence will be out again. Yeah,
especially when you're forced to question, what the substance of that kind of an address will be. We've had reporting here at MS Now around documents, thousands of them, around election interference that this administration has long alleged but never been able to prove. What does it mean if you potentially have the CIA director and other top intelligence officials standing next to the president spreading those conspiracy theories? We don't know yet what we will see and hear on Thursday night, but I think it's imperative for us to remember the foundational facts here and that this administration has never proven the lies that they've told about 2020 in Georgia or elsewhere. Retired CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos, always great to have you. Thank you.